All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We have a great topic with Dr. Hall. Timeline or timing, I should say, coincides with the turning of the new year. We're going to talk through a little bit about where Quitter's Day comes from. The second Friday in January apparently is is when the highest percentage of folks decide to quit on whatever resolutions that they had. This is also kind of, in my experience, indicative of what I've experienced and seen for folks that have set a plan, tried to execute on the plan, and just quite didn't. So, not necessarily a resolution, but a plan to move things forward and eventually find yourself off track. So, today we're going to talk again with Dr. Hall in regards to the things to keep you out of that kind of a scenario where you might find yourself quitting the plans that you have. We'll talk through probably one of the most important things I think is what's your why? Do you have a logical plan? What's your perspectives? How are you motivated? Are you doing the comparison game? So just a lot of topics. Hopefully we'll keep it somewhat on point with our desires for timelines, but this one might go a little long, but I can pretty much assure you today, I feel like this one will be of high value and really help you to execute on your goals. Today, as I mentioned, we're bringing back on Dr. Hall. He's a business psychologist, executive coach, public speaker, a multi-time author. And as I always say, what I find the most important is the neuro nerd side of him that helps us understand how it is that we execute on the things that we talk about. With that, I'll bring him on. How you doing today, Dr. Hall?
I am doing quite well, thank you.
Good, good. I apologize to everybody about the if there's a lack of flow. We've taken a little time off for the holidays, and I feel like that might have been a little disjointed, but hopefully I got the point across. Anyway, but before we move into the topic, let me do a couple of housekeeping items here. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jared Lee, and I'm the associate broker and team lead here at My Home Connection, also known as MHC Realty. We are sponsored by the Perfect Real Estate Business. We've been developing this over the last couple of decades, in large part now with Dr. Hall, bringing in things like business coaching, life coaching, mentoring, and training, whatever aspect it is that you need in your life, in your business to level up and improve your efforts. Of course, we're bringing in a lot of traditional stuff as well that you would expect out of a brokerage and a team. And then some other new stuff that our industry is experiencing with profit sharing, revenue sharing, things like that. So if you'd like to have that conversation, we would welcome an opportunity to chat. But with that, let me bring Dr. Hall in. And you're the one who enlightened me on the Quitter's Day. I find it pretty interesting. Can you give us a little bit of backstory, how you came across it and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, I heard about it. I heard about it probably 5 or 6 years ago, and then there was a more recent study by the app Strava, which
Okay.
is an app that lets you post your exercise, your bike ride, your run, all of that, and share that with your friends. And apparently, by the second Friday in January, 80% of their users stopped their New Year's resolution.
8-0.
80, not 1-8, 80, 80%. So 4 out of 5 broke the resolution by the second Friday of the year.
Didn't even make it 2 weeks.
No, no.
That's, yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but that's a number I would not have expected. It is pretty sad.
It's well, or maybe it says something about the nature of making resolutions. Maybe it says something about how difficult it is to change, and our intentions to change very often are good. Yeah, our intentions to change are good. Usually, people don't wake up, on New Year's Day and go, "Boy, I hope I'm a worse person this coming year."
Right.
So it's very hard to change habits. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the business I've been in. How do I influence people to change their thought habits, and how do I influence people to change their behavioral habits?
Yeah, I think is there maybe something lost in the approach to this is what I want to do, but a lack of understanding that it is a habit change and the difficulty of changing habits. And I don't know.
Well, I mean, everybody wants to be a millionaire, but nobody wants to do the work. I mean, it's the same. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
Um, I, I think there's one most important reason people fail on their resolutions, and there are some things that they can do that are really well outlined in the popular literature on how they can change their habits.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, let's go down. I mean, we've kind of talked about the negative side, why things fail, but let's get in on an optimistic note and talk about what we can do to improve those statistics a little bit. Um, this was more of a personal thing for me of why I put it on there, and you can tell me if this is in your experience something that's a big miss. But not only what's your why, but is it a deep enough why? One of the things that we've had in our industry, Joe Stump, I'm trying to remember the organization that he runs, but anyway, he talks about 7 layers of questions. You ask the question, but then you basically ask the same question to get to a different level. And it's a little painful to watch because 7 layers takes a while, but to really get down to that 7th level of the question, the answer is much different than the first one that was given.
Yeah, I've heard it as a Japanese efficiency technique, and they only do 5, which is the 5 whys.
Oh,
But if you ask someone, why do you want to lose weight, and then you ask them, well, because I want to look better. Well, why do you want to look better? Well, because da 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 da, and those repeated questions, the 5 whys, or in this case, the 7 whys, will get you to core principles. And I think that's very important. Most people are so busy being busy that they never spend enough time in quiet reflection focusing on core principles.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I've also noticed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this because it just popped into my head, but it seems like if the why is somewhat superficial, and maybe this is the 5 whys or the 7 layers, however you want to look at it, but if you ask somebody, why do you want to lose weight? Because I want to look better. That's different than, hey, I think I've got a death sentence because I'm wildly overweight and all of these symptoms are manifesting themselves. Now that's a different level.
Yeah.
But now I'm at the age where you ask me why I want to lose weight. Yeah, all those things are nice, but also I want to be here for my grandkids. Like that
Yeah.
level of why I would argue is, I mean, that's a big why to me. It's much stronger than me just wanting to look and feel better.
Right. Well, you and I have talked about this a zillion times, but our automatic thoughts are based, they come from our beliefs, which come from our attitudes, which come from our presupposition or our worldview. And by asking those 5 whys, it helps to get at those core presuppositions.
Yeah.
I mean, I would ask the question, why do you want to be around for your grandkids?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I want to be there to help them live a happy, healthy life and be part of it.
Okay. Okay. And so, I mean, we can continue down
Right.
this, but it'll eventually get you to core principles that drive all of your behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you keep that at your, in focus as you're wondering, am I going to skip this habit? Then you're like, oh, wait a minute. If I don't do this, I'm giving up that.
Right. The difficulty of that abstractified idea is it's hard to keep reminding you. Like if you want to lose weight and you're looking at a donut, you're not thinking about, boy, in 20 years, I want to be able to, I want to be able to pick up my granddaughter on Christmas Day and run around the house with her. You're not thinking about that. You're thinking about donuts. Good. So it's keeping that in the front of your mind, and that's part of the habit making process is keeping the behavior top of mind.
Well, I love, your identifying of delayed gratifications, the master skill, because once you
Yep.
introduce that into your life, the urge of that donut, I don't know, there's all kinds of biological reasons why people will say, like, you got some gut biome that just your second brain is telling you gotta have that donut and you've got to
True.
override that. I don't know, I don't know exactly.
No,
how.
that's true. If you've been feeding the bad gut biome, they definitely want sugar. They
Yeah.
love sugar, and they'll make you feel awful.
And you got to understand the power of that. And so that you can if you just think, oh, I'm just being weak, it's like, no, you're struggling with something, not just you being disciplined. It's literally
It's
a second brain
physiological.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the neuro nerd side of things that I so appreciate. You understand why things are happening, and then you can work through it. Oh, my stomach's telling me this. I have to override that so that I don't do that. So I focus on my long-term why. Anyway, it's this long, process.
Yeah, but when you have that craving, it's really telling yourself, I will withstand this brief period of unpleasantness for a larger, longer term reward later.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do when there's a donut right there.
Right. Again, I just noticed I've got two views of you and I've been looking at my screen instead of the monitor. So anyway, I apologize, guys. I'm trying to get back in the rhythm here, but so that's if that was frustrating you in any way, I apologize. But
I was not frustrated.
No, I figured you'd be good with that because you probably know what I'm dealing with. But if the audience is like, why is he looking? Anyway, just never mind. Let's talk. So that's the why. I'm sure we could spend a whole podcast on that, but let's, and maybe we will at a later date. Maybe we'll break this down, into greater detail. But so, if you have your why, and if the why isn't significant enough, I guess you just got to go, okay, then maybe I need to move on, because if I don't have a big enough why, it could probably fail anyway. So why don't I focus on something that's going to be successful?
Yeah.
So, okay. So if you make a plan and you're like, is it logical? Let's use weight, because that's, I don't know what the percentage of people, but my guess is it's pretty high. January 1st.
Pretty high percentage. Yeah.
Yeah. Can lose weight. Is it logical? Okay. I heard somebody the other day say they wanted to lose, 15 pounds by their birthday. When's your birthday? Mm-hmm. It's not even the middle of February. And I'm just like, what? I don't.
That's about a pound and a half a week. Yeah, that's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah. Anyway, to each his own. Everybody's got to make goals, but I think, if you said, I want to lose X pounds by the end of the year, and by the way, I guess you can't see my hands, but anyway, that's why if you're just seeing my head bob around, anyway, and you said 15, 20, 30 pounds.
I'm sorry. All I can think of is Talladega Nights. Will Ferrell, what do I do with my hands?
Oh, right. That's what I feel like. I can't see my hands. If you hold my hands, I can't talk, type thing. But I want to, and this, I'm going through this exercise because I think it's important. Also, on what's your plan? Is your plan logical? And then if it's longer term, it's going to be easier to accomplish because you can make adjustments, right? If he's going to lose 15 pounds in under 2 months, he better be on point. You can't have a cheat day.
I would argue you probably should have a cheat day, but that's
well,
and I can tell you why. But
yeah.
I would say on this point, Jared, and I would say this is the most important point in my mind about changing behavior, is that the reason New Year's resolutions fail by the second Friday of January is because of the letter S. People make New Year's resolutions. Just make one New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
And if you look at the evidence of behavioral change, people who choose to change one thing at a time are far more likely to make that change. And I'll give an example. Years ago, I was on the East Coast talking to a convention of judges. And so these are all judges in a particular state. And I gave this principle. I talked about this principle of choose one thing. And it was an introductory comment to my speech. And then a year later, they invited me back, and I was very grateful to go back. And at the end of my talk, these two judges come up to me. And the one woman says to me, she goes, she wants to talk to you. I said, great, I'm happy to talk to you. It's not like I'm famous or anything. They're all judges.
Right.
And she says, you probably don't recognize her. And I'm thinking to myself, no, of course I don't recognize her. I talk to thousands of people a year. I talk to thousands of people individually a year. No, I don't remember you. And she goes, you know why you don't remember her? And the woman is grinning and nodding. And she's
happy to
lost
tell you.
50 pounds
Wow.
since last year. I said, what? She goes, yes. She decided she was going to change one thing. She didn't want to change anything else. Now that she's done that, she's going to change her second thing. And then she said, it was a sweet compliment, but she said, and it's all because of you. You've made this profound difference in her life. And it's like, whoa, stop.
Right.
I gave you an idea.
Right.
I gave this whole room the same idea.
You executed.
You're the one who decided, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And with all the other points we're going to make, she's the one who chose one idea, was really clear on it, and then operationalized it throughout the year and had these incredible results. 50 pounds in a year, that's crazy.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy good
Right.
for her.
Yeah.
So I tell the idea, but then it's up to the individual to apply it. And you can't exert that much self-control if you're trying to change that many things. It's just one thing. That's all we have the capacity for, because we have day jobs.
Yeah, I'll give you an example here. I did try to do that, and I found a habit tracker. Somehow got a recommendation that said, put a habit tracker in your phone. I'm like, okay, I found a free one. Like, let me give it a shot. So I put on all these habits, right? You know where I'm going with this, right? Yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do the other thing. And, in my defense, I did put some small ones on there, like, just really easy ones, like, but they got to happen. And I did do a lot of them for a while, and I just got overwhelmed. I just got burnt out because the habit tracker is good in that it every day tells you whether you did or didn't do it. And it keeps you from bouncing off because it resets. So I love that. But if you're the person that absolutely wants to not have that counter reset and you're trying to do a number of things at once, that doesn't work. So I had a couple easy ones and a kind of hard one. I kept the majority. Anyway, there's a point to all this. And I finally got to the point where I just got so burnt out, I dumped them all. I'm like, I need a break.
Yep.
You saw that coming.
Yeah, I mean, we all need a break. And so if we look at self-control, like every cognitive capacity, is fatigable. We can become mentally fatigued, and we can become self-control fatigued. So this is all based on work from an academic psychologist named Roy Baumeister, who talks about self-control and willpower. It's this fantastic book. I think everyone should read it. It's called Willpower: Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength by Roy Baumeister and John Tierney. And Baumeister does such an excellent job, and Tierney's really a fantastic writer. They do such a great job of describing how self-control is a limited resource. And then at some point, you just don't have any more of that mental resource. So you need to have a day off. Mm-hmm. And they call it a cheat day, which makes it sound like it's naughty. And I wish they would call it something else, like, willpower recovery day or restoration day. I don't know what to call it, because you're not really cheating. What you're doing is, by not having to exercise that self-control on that day, you're able then to redouble your efforts for the next 6 days. So I think it's a necessary part of good habit formation, because you just can't do it forever.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I don't know if I've told you. I think I might have. I'm trying to be on a habit every year, do once or twice 75 hard. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
Okay, so anyway, obviously it's 75 days, and I won't bore you with all the details, but your water, your exercise twice a day, blah 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 blah. Uh, and 75 days is brutal with everything they have on there.
Hmm.
But I wonder, like how long a person could make. Could it be 150 days hard? You know,
Well, so my question is, there's a lot of motivation in doing 75 hard. Is like you do it with a bunch of buddies, and I'm the biggest badass because I did 75 hard and I didn't need to go back one day. And you all want to be David Goggins, and if you don't know who he is, you should look him up because he's he's not really human.
right?
Uh,
I
I
agree.
mean, that guy's got a special speed going.
Hmm.
I just don't think most people can do that. And to recognize he's got an excess of that self control and self denial characteristic, and to think you can be David Goggins, most people just can't. Like, I'm never going to play in the NBA. I just
Right.
can't.
Right.
And I don't resent it. I don't regret it.
Just
I
okay.
recognize my limitations. And the same is true with self control, is that the vast majority of us have normal amounts of self control. So let's work with the gifts we've been given. And I wonder if people who do 75 hard at the end of it, they go, I'm never doing that again. And they actually fall back into worse habits
Mm.
because they've denied themselves for so long. Um, I remember there was a speaker, a positive speaker. His name was Zig Ziglar. I don't know if you've ever heard
Oh
of him.
yeah, yeah. He's amazing.
But I got a chance to meet him, and in the talk where I got to meet him, um, he said, "I went to my doctor and I needed to lose. I think it was like 60 pounds." And he says, "Oh, I'm going to lose that in 3 months." And his doctor said, "No, that's not a good idea." He said, "How long did it take you to gain this weight?" And he said, "I don't know. I guess it's been tracking up for the last 6 or 7 years." He goes, "Okay, so I want you to divide 60 pounds over the number of days in 6 or 7 years." And so he divided it out and he realized he needed to lose a half an ounce a day. And so every day when he was eating, he would leave 1 teaspoonful of food on his table. He goes, "That's my half an ounce." And he says, and guess what? 6 years later, he had lost to 60 pounds.
That's funny.
So, so you've got to come up with a plan that's sustainable for your ultimate goal.
Yeah, yeah. Love it. A good plan, and a plan, and stick to the plan. And I'll just be honest, and I think this was helpful, so I'm bringing it up. If I'm honest, I made it a 75 medium. There was some there was some stuff I just like. I have a friend that he was doing it legit, like full on, and the photo every day took him out twice. He did everything, and he was like more than halfway through, and he had to reset twice because he didn't take his photo that day. And so I don't take the photos, so I took that out. But anyway, my point in telling you that is we had talked about there's only so many things, but I think be realistic about who you are, what you're about, what you're going to do.
Yeah,
And if you're going to struggle taking the photo, don't do the photo, but do the rest and be okay with that. And then
exactly.
and then
Exactly.
my habit tracker, when I did get back on the wagon and I did put things back into it, I put in the things that I knew that I was doing well, that I just built habits around that were going to be, you know, kind of without thinking. Some of the things in the habit tracker was like, if you don't click the button, it gives you another day credit for not drinking alcohol. Well, I quit drinking alcohol, not for no reason. Then I just wanted, I didn't need
Yeah,
alcohol. But anyway, so it would tick. Now I'm 5 years into this thing and I'm getting credit for something I didn't even have to click it.
exactly.
So just do the things, but I added on the things that I felt like I could really do, and then something a little extra. And I think what we're getting to is, once you have the habit, then you can look at other habits, and then we're also going to get to keystone habits.
Well, so keystone habit is that one habit. And then once you get that habit as part of your lifestyle, and the example I always give is brushing your teeth. As adults, none of us have to learn that habit.
It's not on my habit tracker.
It's not in your habit tracker?
No, I mean, I to your point, I just do it. I don't
just
need to
do
track
it. We don't think about it.
Right.
So if you take a keystone habit like that, and then James Clear in his book Atomic Habits, which is a fantastic book. So there are 2 books on habit that everyone who wants to change their habits should read. One is James Clear's Atomic Habits, and the other is Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit. And it just depends on who you like better. They both are talking mostly about the same ideas. But they talk about this keystone habit, and what James Clear, he talks about habit stacking, which is once you have a habit, then you add another one to it. And so if you're thinking, okay, when I'm brushing my teeth, I need to there's Callie Means, who is the author of Good Energy. She says you need to be outside every day, in the cold, in the air, in the sun. And she's habit stacked. Every time she brushes her teeth, she goes out and walks around in her yard.
Nice.
That's her stack. Okay. So she's going to brush her teeth every day. So she added on to it the stack of getting outside and walking around. So if it's frigid cold outside, she's outside. If it's boiling hot outside, she's outside. But how long does it last? 2 minutes, because then she's done brushing her teeth. So that's a great example of habit stacking. And so you can come up with additional habits. Once you do that, then it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to be outside for 2 minutes brushing my teeth, I can do high leg lifts, or I can, whatever you're going to add to your habit stack. And then eventually all of that becomes your new habit. And, then your grandkids are going to go, why does grandpa go outside and do these high leg lifts around the house while he's brushing his teeth?
Yeah.
But you've created this sequence of habits that go together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love it, right? We all have 24 hours in our day. For me, in 75 Hard, for those of you who don't know, you do 2 45-minute workouts, one outside, one inside, preferably. And then, you got to read, preferably nonfiction. Well, audiobook as I'm walking, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I have a friend, he has a formula, 20-40-60. 20 minutes of physical exercise. 20 minutes of quiet reflection, 40 minutes of reading, and 60 minutes of exercise.
One more time.
Each day.
Yeah, if you don't mind, one more time. 20 minutes of quiet reflection.
60. 20 minutes of quiet reflection, 40 minutes of reading for personal development, and 60 minutes of physical exercise.
Oh, okay.
And he says, if you listen to an audiobook while you're on your bike, you get them both.
Nice.
And if you got another 20 minutes on your bike and you have quiet reflection, you're praying or doing whatever, you got your whole 2 hours condensed into an hour. And people go, I don't have that much time. So I say, okay, then do 10, 20, 30. And they go, I don't have, that's still an hour. Okay, then 5, 10, 15, that's a half an hour. Whatever you need, you got to start somewhere, but you can combine those positive activities together.
Well, and I'll insert this here. This is a little bit off topic, but I think it's super important that, for the people that say I don't have time for that, if you're not exercising, you're going to pay for it later, in my experience, right? So I don't have time to exercise, but you have time to get sick, anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to interject.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind. If you're in a nursing home, you're going to be spending $5,000 to $10,000 a month for that care. And if you can avoid going to a nursing home later in your life completely, that's great. If you can avoid going to a nursing home 1 year later, do the math.
Yeah.
Okay, 5,000 times 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Or 5,000 times or 10,000 times 12. And suddenly the investments that you make in an exercise, going to the gym, and that membership or buying supplements, all of that is chump change relative to the cost of care later in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's wrap up. Make sure you have a logical plan. Pick the one thing. I think build it in so it's just a regular part. It's not, it's a habit, built-in habit that's just going to happen, and then introduce another habit. Have a cornerstone habit. Oh, one thing I did want to interject. One of your, as I recall, preferred or highly recommended top tier cornerstone habit is good sleep.
Oh my gosh. If people ask me what's the one habit I need to work on first, it's always sleep. It is the cornerstone for all good living. Yeah. Your brain is repairing itself every night while you're asleep. Your brain is clearing out all of the toxins that have accumulated and all the dead material that's been sloughed off of your brain every night. You need that time of sleep to clear out your brain so your brain can operate in a healthy fashion.
See, more neuro node stuff. I love it. That's gold.
Well, have I ever told you that your brain actually contracts? It's got the consistency of Jell-O, and the blood doesn't go to the brain.
Okay.
So it has to, the ick in your brain has to move through cerebrospinal fluid, and that cerebrospinal fluid then gets into the lymphatic system, and your brain does this slow motion pulsing at night. And you can look it up on the internet, and you'll see these MRIs of people's brains. And what it's doing is that contraction and expansion moves the cerebrospinal fluid so that your brain is getting rid of the ick into the lymphatic system.
Kind of pumping it out.
It's essentially pumping it out. So you need to sleep in order for your brain to clear itself out. And so you want to be rested and refreshed, right? Well, it's really primarily about your brain. Your body gets rest too. The parasympathetic nervous system and the jobs is rest, digest, and repair. And that's what sleep does is your digestion you can clear out your digestion, which is why you should be fasting every night, which is why, intermittent fasting from time to time is a really good practice to give your digestive system time to get cleared out. And so that your digestive system can repair. But your white blood cells, your T cells, your lymphocytes, all of those bodily immune system functions operate better when you're sleeping and you can repair yourself. In fact, many of us, the reason we get sick and sleep all the time when we're sick is we're sleep deprived, and the body needs to conserve the energy of consciousness and apply it to fighting the illness. And so our brains are so active, including when we're asleep, we need to be unconscious to allow the energy management to go to other areas.
Interesting. Well, I like the idea. Again, we'll move on like I promised. But if you're not refreshed and you don't have the energy to stay focused on the habits or the changing of habits, it's easy to just dump off, right? I don't have the power, the energy to give the effort.
You don't have the willpower.
Willpower.
And
there
you have to rest and recover to get the willpower back.
Yeah. Love it. All right, let's see. So the other thing that I think I've experienced, I've seen to some degree in others is, what is the perspective of what you're doing? Is it accurate or is it off? I think if it's inaccurate, you can find yourself doing things that weren't going to make sense in the first place. So, just doing some research on, if you are losing weight and you want to be down to a certain goal, and we'll get into the comparison later, but if you think you're going to get down to this weight, but you're naturally kind of big, and you might correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you're a bigger person anyway, your perspective is wrong.
Yeah, your perspective, and this goes to the topic, the gap or the gain. And if you've got 100 pounds to lose and you've lost 1.5 pounds, it can be pretty demoralizing to think, I've got 98.5 pounds to go. This sucks.
Right.
But if you think, oh, I've accomplished 1.5 pounds. Awesome. So the more we focus on the gap between where we are in our ideal state, the more we will become demoralized. The more we focus on our accomplishments, the gain, and this comes from Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. This is his idea. This isn't unique to me. If you focus on the gain, which is how much I've accomplished, then you're very likely to have success.
Yeah.
You've got to measure that, though. You've got to measure your gains. So
right.
You got to keep track of them.
To know that they're there, to give yourself credit for it. Oops, let me go back
Yes.
to this here. There was a portion in the book. So for those of you who don't know, he wrote The Gap versus the Gain. And thank you for turning me on to that too, by the way. I'm not even all the way through it, and it's just been amazing. But there was a Olympic speed skater, arguably the best skater, at that time, kind of in the world, but for whatever reason, just kept falling short of his Olympic gold medals. And he found himself just constantly focusing on, why he didn't have the medals yet. Did he need those medals to prove to everybody that he was the best speed skater in the world? And then kind of the last opportunity for him to get the gold, I don't know how it happened exactly, but his perspective shifted that, everybody thinks I am. And that's okay, but I need to be okay with whether I am or I'm not. And I just need to enjoy where I'm at and how far I've come. And, he gets into really a lot of detail about that. And that's how he chose to run the last race, which he said was arguably his worst race, like the one that he was probably the least likely to win. And not only did he win, but he set a world record. So yeah. I thought that was a very, just an interesting story with a profound outcome that people need to look at and realize. And we're going to lead into comparison here later, but I didn't make it to 10 pounds off, but I made it to 8. Right?
And that's fantastic. Yeah, you should look at your gains. I think that story also points out the importance of mindset on performance. And this is not just athletic performance; it's on all of our performance. Whatever job you do, if you focus on the wrong things, your performance will go down. I work with a guy, and in his business, they have monthly performance reports, and he and his I'll just call her his admin, though she's more than that. That's not really fair to call her an admin. But he tells her, "Don't ever show me my monthly reports. I don't want to know." He said, because that's a trailing indicator. What I want to know is the leading indicators. Am I doing all the things that I need to do? And I'll let the trailing indicators take care of themselves. And so if you focus on the trailing indicators, like what your weight is, then you're not focusing on the leading indicators, which is how much you're putting in your mouth.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, anyway, I just think that's very important for people to give themselves credit, even if they've gone backwards. So if weight's your thing, and in one year you lose some weight, but the next year you kind of backpedal or you don't lose as much as you did the prior year, map it out over a 5-year, that'll give you incentive.
And I've been teaching people since I got into this business of what I call sawtooth progress. And sawtooth progress is, I did well today, I didn't do as well the next day, and then I went up a little bit, but then I went down a little bit, and then up a little bit. And so if you look at every day, you're just a zigzag. But if you take a longer perspective, you can see that the sawtooth eventually trends up.
Yeah.
And so it's important that you not look at your daily, but you look at a longer term.
Yeah.
Which is the long-term perspective that daily you're going to have ups and downs, but over the course of time, is it trending in the right direction?
Well, and I think you have to, certainly in certain aspects, and I imagine it's applicable even in more occasions than I could think of here, but weight loss, there was a time when that was my objective, lose some weight, get in better shape. And what I chose to do was get on my stationary bike, do the cardio thing, but then my weight went up and it kept going up. And I was like, what's going on? Yeah, I was building...
You're building muscle.
Well, the beauty is I had a scale that was not only tracking my weight, but my BMI, my fat,
Right.
my lean mass, my fat. And that's the indicator that kind of saves me and all that is like, oh, look, my muscle mass is going up, which is more dense than fat.
Right.
So, anyway, so the sawtooth thing, if I had looked, within the coming days and just been bummed, I could have just fell off the wagon and said, never mind. But fortunately, I was more at a long term. I'm going to lose this over the long term. And then, by the way, what I was measuring, which I think is our next topic. So, whew.
Well, you've used this term twice, maybe 3 times in our talk. So before we get off of it,
Okay.
you say falling off the wagon. Do you know where that phrase comes from?
I do not.
It comes from the alcohol abstinence movement that led to prohibition.
Okay.
And they would go through town, and people who were abstinent would all get on the wagon. And they would ride through town to demonstrate we are all abstinent from alcohol.
I love it.
And if you fell off the abstinence wagon, that meant you started drinking again. And so it's become part of our popular culture. And what they were using is public displays and public commitments to abstinence, to a certain habitual change. And when people went away from it, they, quote, fell off the wagon. Well, my argument would be, don't even get on the wagon. Just don't drink.
Right.
And so if you drink again, when you meant to be abstinent, if the public commitment, and we can talk about this more when we talk about comparison, if the public commitment causes you embarrassment, humiliation, whatever, that won't make you change. That'll be worse. So we'll get to that when we get to comparison.
Okay. Excellent. But as far as the monitor and measure, right, you can say, I got to, I'm going to do this. And you have to look for you're going to want the success because you have to give yourself the credit for the success, but you got to monitor it, right? What's your, one of your
Monitor and manage.
Well, yeah, you don't manage what you don't monitor.
Correct.
So are you monitoring it correctly, right? If I didn't have the right scale that gave me that level of information,
you would think you were a larded up person because you'd gained weight when
Right.
you looked like Arnold in Mr. Olympia times.
yeah, I had some muscle memory in my legs, which are big muscles, and it just happened to
Yeah.
be putting on a lot of weight and was, moving around. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I think that's super important of, how do I realistically, we talked about that, right? Don't do something that somebody, obviously people are always trying to market and sell you something. You could lose such and such pounds and so on. I mean, really that's a very blessed individual with great genetics and in the perfect scenario with all the time on their hands in the world. It just doesn't work. So anyway, and then accurately, go ahead.
Yeah. So accurately, that's back to your scale. Are you measuring the right thing? And then, as I mentioned before with the person that I work with, are you measuring a leading indicator or a trailing indicator? So a leading indicator is how many push-ups did I do, or how much time was I on the bike? The trailing indicator is, in this case, the weight loss. Yeah. So you can't expect the trailing indicator to matter unless you're measuring the leading indicator.
Yeah. Love it. Let's see. I think we're going on to comparison. Oh, nope. We're on motivation. You know what? Does that one, let's see. And we get comparison after that. Well, we'll just go, we'll stick with on track here.
Yep.
So is this a why question? Did I duplicate this?
Yeah. It goes back to intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And anything besides what's inside of you is an extrinsic motivator. So okay. Social pressure, social conformity. With 75 Hard, you're working against, you're working with people to keep you, quote, accountable. That's an extrinsic motivator. Getting on the sobriety bandwagon. That's an extrinsic motivator. Intrinsic is, why are you doing it for yourself? What internally is driving you? And the only sustainable motivation long-term is an intrinsic one, that you're doing this for your own reasons.
As far as I am in the Gap versus the Gain book, that they pound on that hard, that anything outside of an extrinsic motivation is useless. It's a moving target. It's set by somebody else. Anyway, there's all kinds of reasons why that's flawed. So, we'll get to comparison. So I'm trying to avoid that just yet, but really that's what that becomes, right? Social media,
Yeah.
did I get as many likes as the person I was, targeting to get to, but now I got somebody else that's my next objective and they got more likes and comments and, who cares? That
Well,
person.
actually, I think there's a reason to care. If comparison works well for you, and I'll tell you why comparison can work.
Okay, let's go to comparison. Let's see here.
Yeah.
There we go.
So, I mean, there are lots of people who say comparison is bad, and it can be demotivating for some people. I mean, it really can. That you look at somebody else who's so far, more successful in whatever way it is, and it can create envy, and that comparison can be pretty awful. But why do we keep score in sports?
To see who wins.
Yeah. It seems to motivate a lot of really good behavior. Well, people go, well, that's really superficial because it's just a game. So let's roll back the clock to the 1950s when the NFL was just getting started and there were, 6 or 7 teams. There weren't that many teams, and they were essentially semi-pro. So the Green Bay Packers, they were meat packers. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they were steel workers. These are people who had day jobs and were doing this on the side. But that competition, where it was a zero-sum game, some people are going to win and some people are going to lose. And people go, oh yeah, see, if you lost a lot, you'd be really embarrassed, and that would be bad for you. So we shouldn't keep score. And there are childhood basketball programs that don't keep score officially. And they're not popular because kids want to keep score.
Yeah.
And parents in the stand are keeping score.
Yeah.
Because we like to be able to measure progress. And so if we say, well, that'll be bad for someone's self-esteem, well, then that's probably not their game. They should probably compete somewhere else. So the reason I bring this up is people go, well, competition is bad, comparison is bad because there's winners and losers. It's a zero-sum game. Okay, if it's a zero-sum game, then why did a semi-pro team from Pittsburgh turn into an entity that's worth billions of dollars? And this wide place in the road in Green Bay, Wisconsin, with a bunch of meat packers, how did it turn into a multi-billion-dollar entity that's provided enjoyment, employment? If we just look at the people who make keychains with Green Bay Packers stuff on them, that's creating jobs for people. In other words, this comparison, this keeping score where there are winners and losers, everybody gains.
Yeah.
Even the worst team in the NFL is worth billions of dollars.
Right.
And 50, 60 years ago, they weren't worth even millions of dollars. Right. And so comparison can be good unless you're the kind of person who gets demoralized by it. Okay, just be aware of that in yourself. Other people like it.
Yeah.
And it makes everybody better. So I'm not against comparison. I'm not against accountability. But the people who succeed in these competitions have an intrinsic drive, and they have an intrinsic drive for accomplishment. Yeah. They like to keep score. Okay. Yeah. If you're not that person, don't play the game.
Right. No, I love all of that. There was a topic in the book Gap versus Gain of a football player, and I wish I could remember his name, but I'm trying to keep the story fairly short, but really what he said is, my idea. This is the abbreviated or shortened version of what he said, but my identity isn't in the game, and he got all kinds of backlash. You can't be a top level quarterback unless you're all in and this is your life and this is all you do. And he said, basically, I'm intrinsically motivated. I don't need your validation for what I do. And I'm okay with operating at a very high level in this sport. But if this sport went away tomorrow, I'm going to operate at a very high level in another sport.
In the next thing.
The next
Yes.
thing. So, I think that's the important. Don't put your identity in that activity, but find that intrinsic motivation, and don't let external forces, affect that.
Yeah,
Positively or
and
negatively.
I would say, let's use professional sports or professional musicians as examples. The people who make it to those high levels, there are thousands of other people who have that raw native talent, but they don't have the mindset. So you need the talent, you need the mindset, and then you need a little luck.
Mm-hmm.
Right place, right time. And none of us get to control that. So what are you doing to get your mindset right? What are you doing to get your skill set right? And then sometimes just things happen.
Yeah.
And you're not in control of those things. So you use those skills and that mindset in a different area, and you kick it in that other area.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, and I want to hone in on the mindset. I know we're going long here, but I think this is just great information. So I think it's all good. But the mindset that this quarterback had, that the author really honed in on, is all the greats, the Michael Jordans and all of those, they got into flow because they didn't need that external validation. Right. And the comparison, because the comparison, if there was any, was them versus themselves, yesterday, the week before, 10 years ago, whatever. And they could get into flow because they weren't worried about what somebody was going to say about them, what the critique might be. Was somebody else doing slightly better than them that year or in that game or whatever? They just said, I've done everything I can. I'm bringing it all, and I'm going to put it all out there, and I'm not letting something else. Kind of like back to Dan, I wish I could remember, the speed skater. I guess that's what they've concluded was in large part dinging on him is, what are people going to say? How are they going to rate me? What's my legacy? And all these things. And he just set all that stuff aside and said, I'm just going to have fun. I've done what I can do.
Right. And you can get yourself out of the zone of peak performance by being overly anxious about what you're doing. And so there's an optimal level of anxiety about whatever the activity is that it will give you the peak performance.
Wow. Good stuff. Let me, I am looking at the clock. I said I wasn't going to be sensitive to that, but a little bit of a lie, I guess. I have to be somewhat sensitive to it. But, and I think we might have already covered this one, intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic. But I think the locus of control is, who are you going to blame when things don't work? If it's easy to say, the gym wasn't open, or, because they had some leaky pipe, or
the economy is bad, or whatever. Yeah. That's an external locus of control where you blame outside forces for your success or failure. That's a really awful way to run through life. Of course, there are external sources of things that are outside of your control. And if you're really logical about it, we really don't control a lot. But that little bit we do control, that's where we need to focus our attention.
Yeah.
I live in a mountainous area, and there's a chance, a non-zero chance, every day I drive down the road, that a boulder could come off the mountain and crush me. It could happen. It's a non-zero chance, not very high. But if I focus on boulders flying off the cliffs to kill me, I'm not going to pay attention to the things that are really in my control, which are, I got to keep my hands on the wheel. I got to pay attention to this curvy road. Yeah. So I just focus on what I can control. I don't focus on boulders landing on the roof of my car.
Yeah. And I think that just, we've had this discussion in one of our episodes in the past. And I'm trying to think of how we exactly played it out, but kind of my definition of a reason versus an excuse. Excuses got to go, but, reasons are reasons. But then can you do something, that was out of my control, but now I'm going to do something different.
Well, there's plenty of things out of your control. So inside the little square that you can control, which is what's inside your head, your attitude and your effort. That's it. What you think and how you behave from that thinking, that initiative, that determines your outcomes. We'll use an example of things I don't have control over. I fly for my work a lot. Well, sometimes planes have mechanical problems, and I just can't get there. Right?
Yeah.
I miss a connection. There's weather. Nobody controls the weather. Nobody controls somebody, but somebody beyond me controls the mechanical problems. So I just got to make the best of it. And so what do I do to put the odds in my favor for when things do go badly?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, for example, if I'm not fit and my plane comes in late and this is a true story. I ran across the Minneapolis airport. I did catch their train, but I made it from one corner to the other in 6 minutes.
You were moving.
If I couldn't have run, I couldn't have made my plane.
Mm.
Okay. But I'm in charge of my fitness. I'm not in charge of anything else. But because I took advantage of staying in better shape, I was able to make my plane where other people couldn't make it.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. There was another, I dropped it. I hate it when I do that, but anyway, this is all good stuff of making sure that, you understand the differences between excuses and reasons, and then dodging. Oh, I do remember what it was. Like in the 75 hard, you quite often talk about the people that are keeping you accountable and you're sharing, how you're doing on it. And, if one is outside, one of the activities, one of the 45-minute exercises outside, I talked to somebody and they're like, oh, it snowed too much yesterday. I couldn't get out. Okay, then what did you do? Did you did you have a stationary bike and get on that? Did you do some push-ups? Like, whatever. Did you figure out a way that maybe it wasn't outside, but you did it inside and it just was what it was? Were you hardcore enough to say, I've got to restart my whole 75 over again? Is that helpful to me? Is it not helpful to me? Do I have the mindset of powering back through that whole time period to get back on track to my 75? I don't know. Gauge here. For me, thank goodness I had some, snow boots, and I'm like, I don't care if I'm cold. I'm just going to get it done.
So I mean, there you go. I mean, I think it's a Swedish proverb, which is, there is no bad weather, only bad clothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm Swedish, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Just put another layer on. Make sure you've got boots. Make sure, like if you live where I live, you've got ice spikes. If it's really bad, make sure you got snowshoes, which I also have. So, yep. I mean, everything is figure outable.
There you go. I love that. That's a great way to finish on that specific topic and the whole.
Well, it's a title of a wonderful book by Marie Forleo. Everything is figure outable. It's a great book.
Yeah, especially today, we know a lot about a lot, and we've got it in our hands, right? I mean, you got a supercomputer to look up whatever you want, and maybe it takes you a while to find a good source to the information. We'd like to think we're a good source to a lot of, information, but go figure it out. Like, I'm trying to learn photography, videography. Man, that internet is endless on information. What genre do I want? What camera am I using? Like, I got to figure that stuff out. But it's really figure outable today.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many informational resources, and there is greater access to good information. There's also greater access to awful information. And so you've got to be the person that decides what's good information or not.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're just rolling up on an hour here, so we've doubled our normal desired timeline, but that's okay. Like I said, totally worth it, I believe. But let's do wrap up by making sure that folks know how to get a hold of you. I did not initially load this like I probably should have, but it did load pretty quickly. Thank goodness. How can we get a hold of you, Dr. Hall?
Yeah, they can reach me through my website, which is drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com. You can reach me on X or Instagram at Dr. Roger Hall, spelled out Dr. Roger Hall. And I've got 3 books: Expedition, Staying Happy, Being Productive, and DIY Brain. And I've got another one in the pipeline called DIY Leader Brain.
And then, did you mention the quiz? Sorry, I was navigating the site.
Yeah,
here.
you can take the quiz. That'll if you take the quiz, which will take you to the Freakout course, which is an online course that's available on my website.
Excellent. All right. Well, we covered a lot of ground, a lot of good information. As always, we just really want to thank you for your time, your insight, your advice. Great conversation today.
Thank you for being such a great interviewer.
Awesome. Very good. All right, folks, thanks for joining us today. We hope you have a blessed one.